Well, hey everybody, thank you for tuning in to the Raven's Voice. This is our February 20th. It's Thursday. It'll be a different day for you, wherever you're listening from. A Thursday, it's our Thursday broadcast. This is Zealous here, and with as much as I can possibly be with Tierson.
I'm never enough for a person. That's for damn sure. I always leave them wanting more.
Hey, there's plenty to go around. So if anybody wants seconds, you need to share. He's available.
This is the motto that I have with all the women.
Oh man. Oh man. But anyway, hey, welcome everyone. This week you've probably seen a little bit, maybe late, about cores or our upcoming discussion about that. We wanted to kind of chill back and talk about a major, if not the most major frame component of an AC this week. But before we do that, there's a number of little things we had from our discussion last week
Yeah, plug the show.
to pick, and of course our plugs,
I do
just to
plug.
check in on a few notes and everything. But you know what? He's so enthusiastic about it. I'm going to hand those over to Tierson to go ahead and do our plugs first before we talk about the rest of our news. So, if
Ooh,
you would.
squee. Okay, I get to do them. Guys, don't forget to go to ArmorCoreLegacy.com, the most active forums for the Armor Core community. We have our dedicated forums over there. There's a lot going on. We're going to talk about some of that right now, but there's always something going on there in the forums. You got to check them out. And don't forget, well, if you're listening to this, you probably are already there. And don't forget to go to our website, theravensvoice.com. Check us out. Like I said, you're probably already listening to us, so you're probably already there. Although, you can still find us on YouTube, so maybe you haven't been there yet. And with that, I will do the first plug. We are still for another 10 days or so. We're going to be doing our contest for a copy of the Armored Core Verdict Day soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
Go over to our Facebook page. You can find that link on our website, or it is facebook.com/The Ravens Voice Show. And yeah, just give us a like. We're desperate for friends. We're desperate for likes, so we're going to give away stuff. Actually, no, we're about to explode on that soon. But before we start doing any kind of advertising, we want to give you guys a chance, the listeners that we have right now. Before we go muddying that all up, go ahead and like us on there. And at the end of the month, we're gonna randomly select somebody to get a copy of the Verdict Day soundtrack.
There you have it. And I also believe there's one other thing coming up. It has to do with a certain march and a certain war in ACs. That is the March of War
A march of war.
for AC Verdict Day. That's going to be running all month during March, and that's upcoming. Again, you can tune into the ACL forums if you want to look at details of that event, how that's shaping up, as well as just the teams that we have signed up so far. I don't have tons signed up right now, but
No.
we do have some interest on the board. We've got some people in it, so check that out if you're looking for something to participate in. Even if it's just you, maybe a couple of friends running with the UNAC. Heck, if it's you and a friend running with UNACs, you can still join in this. So,
Or maybe your UNACs are your only friends. We don't discriminate on this. So, sometimes that's the way it is. You guys live your life however you want, as long as you're not hurting anyone. I don't care. That's your choice. This is America. You can live however you want.
so whatever your situation is, check in. By all means, check in and enjoy it. Um, Picking up on a little bit of what we talked about last week, we were checking out the discussion thread before we started tonight about any potential responses that we had, and I believe Switchback was our main respondent from our Let's Talk Tourney discussion
Yes.
last week. Really, just kind of spilled his thoughts. It sounded like as he was listening. And maybe some of the Lego blocks still got strolled out all over the floor, but a whole stream of thoughts, a whole stream of feedback here. And hey,
Hmm.
thank you for your post. Um, yeah, I think there's really a lot that was laid out here, and a lot of things, of course, that we went over.
We
Tied,
we did. We ran the gambit with
yeah,
the topic, and I think it kind of left people without much to say about it, especially with Switchback's post here as well.
yeah. He had one note too that kind of made me smile. It reminded me of on the topic of types of bands. We talked a little about the concept of gentlemen's bands. It was near the end of your post, Switchback. You mentioned that the idea of fairness and balance isn't the only spot where some bands happen. You can simply do them for enjoyment or for the sake as your rationale, as long as that's the focus of the tournament and people understand that's the case. You know, small examples of that, like when you have like practice rounds or small exhibitions, or we used to call them like gatherings. Like if we do pre-tournament events where we don't, you know, it's not costing anybody anything to get in the door. It's just a lot of us just bringing the equipment, the TVs, and everything we needed to play AC. And we said, hey, we're cutting whatever weapons for these runs. The next like 5 matches or so, we're going to do pure blades, stuff like that. And you see this online too now, and that's more in a kind of relaxed, environment when you're playing. So, yeah, I mean, not a ton of ground to tread over here. I guess Tierson mentioned that wasn't, covered. So, but no, hey, fun read. Appreciate the response, and I hope anybody who's thinking about hosting events in the future, if you're going to push something, please do. We'd love to see you do that. Yeah, hey, take some community input into mind. Think through some of these things, listen to the discussion threads, and see what's been done. I think that's always important too. Look at the events that have been had, and if you got an original idea, an original concept, bring that to the table, because that's always really exciting to do, especially in this the online age.
And I get a couple PMs about last week's show, which actually I thought I was going to get ridiculed a bit because I was just exhausted during last week's recording, and I was not making my points as clear as I could have or should have, but I actually got a couple compliments via PM on the topic overall. They're basically complimenting me. They had nothing good to say about you, though.
Oh, of course.
I mean, that's normal, though. So.
Well, no, dude, it's known. Hey, you can go with that. I'm the most negative person here. So.
That's true. That's true. You're negative, Nancy.
Oh,
no, but yeah. So I got a couple PMs from that complimenting the show, and thank you very much for that. Like we tried to approach the tournament standards and rules and such. We tried to approach that at a very unbiased, open-ended kind of format on that, because it should be. I mean, ultimately, the feeling I have on tournaments, and the feeling that I try to give, is that there are going to be those that are going to want to run a tournament by standards acceptable by as many people as possible.
Right.
And then there are going to be people who run their event based on, this is how I want to fucking run my event because it's my event. Both are fine, but at the end of the day, the rules of your event are going to they're going to reflect on the credibility of its winner.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what I was trying to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure most people were going to go into last week's show thinking, oh, they're either gonna renounce what Type Alex has been doing with his event, or they're gonna say, hey, you should run your events this way. And we did a bit of both. But at the same time, if someone's going to host an event and they get people to sign up for it and they show up and the tournament happens, then great. Obviously people liked that. However, as we said last week, the community is lacking in an end-all, be-all event. An event where a winner or winners in a tournament-style event are coming out, and those winners matter. This has been a lifeblood for the community for years, and actually I think the fact that it's missing says a lot.
It does. I mean, one thing that always kind of fascinated me about the competitive scene for Armored Core, namely with the LAN tournaments of the past, was how things boiled down at the end of the day. There's all the initial hype, there's all the initial preparation going into a tournament. There's a lot of people that'll say, oh, what about X Factor? Someone could come out of nowhere, some guy we've never seen, could win it all, and everybody's got the glitz and the stars in their eyes about the event. But you get there, you start playing, you see how your designs, how your skills start adding up, to what's actually there and what's present. And regardless of where you were ranked, regardless of where you hit, and you look at those designs at the end of the day that won, it says a lot, not just about AC, but about, I think, what the current community is doing. Now, in the past, I was more divided between, the East Coast players and, the West Coast, California, the MOC, the Midwest players. We had different scenes, I think, doing different themes, so you could be more tuned in with one and kind of out of touch with the rest. The online era, though, it's a much, much more vast, much more far-reaching, meta you can connect with. But yeah, at the end of these things, there's always a ton to think about, and it's not just your own performance. It's like, okay, well, hey, that's what won, or that's the theme that went forward, or these were the designs, or design singular, however you want to say that. great stuff, I think, to come away with. It would be fantastic, I think, if people could at least gain some of that sense back of coming out of an event feeling that you can walk away with something and gain something, not just, where you placed. And sometimes,
Hmm.
that's what it was about. It's like, okay, you didn't place this time. Why? What won? What can you do about it? What different things are you going to modify if you're there to win? Are you there for pure wins? Are you there maybe just to test your designs to their furthest extent? And winning's just, okay, a part of it if it comes.
I
But,
embrace it all.
Jack of all
I'm just a
trades,
fan of a fan of these kind of events. I mean,
for sure.
those who get to know me well enough in the community know that I'm actually a very competitive person when a competitive environment exists, and that's been the whole thing. I mean, at some point we'll talk about all the plans that we were going to possibly do based on how the community reacts to certain things over in the last 6 months or so.
Hmm.
Someday we'll tell you about what was left out because the community just wasn't showing enough interest in doing online events and in doing competitive events because there's unfortunately some pretty cool things that got left on the cutting room floor. Um, but maybe someday, we look at it and we're like, well, okay, this just can't be supported in this environment.
Hmm.
Maybe in the next one. Maybe next one.
Yeah, we'll see. But, hey, those of you who participate in world mode events, wherever you're doing now, if you just do, your free battles or, if you're with teams, by all means, continue those things. Obviously, push on as we wait to hear news about AC6. That's going to be a while away still, because there's nothing on the board about it now. But do what you do. If you have a team focus and everything right now, just continue in your vein and, enjoy that as much as possible. And, hey, hop in on whatever events you can to help
Yeah,
push the
yeah.
community.
Again, we got March of War here.
Yeah.
This is going to be awesome. Not just awesome, but awesome. Looking forward to being a merc for that. That was always a lot of fun. We're gonna see what we can do about getting some more teams signed up. Though it's still early yet, so we have plenty of days to go. In fact, I think we gained like even a third of the teams in War for November after November started. So
Exactly.
yeah, but it's gonna be a blast. Can't wait for that again. Um, all right. Well, is there anything else we want to talk about? I mean, we did bring up Type Alex's tournament. That is still
Still
ongoing.
ongoing. Still
So
ongoing.
I think we decided to pretty much just leave it at that
Yeah,
right now. So, geez, what else is going on? Oh, we're looking for a team.
definitely. Definitely
We
are.
can talk about that. PS3 international side, we're looking for a team to join. Um, we suck, so you'll have to deal with that. But we got to post up over on the ACL forums about that in the recruitment section. If you like what we bring to the table, and probably you won't, but go ahead and check that out. Yeah, we're looking for a team to join. Um,
Yeah, but other than that, I think you pretty much got things on the table. So um, I say we take a very short break, and when we come back, we go right into our core discussion. We're going to be building things from the top with Armored Core 1 and walking through AC5 up to what we have now with what cores were, what they've become, what's missing, what's been gained. A lot of stuff in between.
all right, we'll see you in a few.
Stay tuned. Hey everybody, thank you again. We are back
Cha!
with style for a discussion all about cores. Like
Cha!
we said, you and your kung fu. I mean, this is just a thing tonight. I'll have to deal with it.
Making noises. I'm just don't
I,
mind me.
I'm
I'm
telling
five.
you, I'm
That's
telling
all.
you. As we were saying before we took our break, we kind of just wanted to take a stroll through memory lane, leading all the way up to current day lane, all about the core. This is the part that AC is not only named after, but is arguably the integral part of an Armored Core unit. This is where
The the
this
mysterious core.
core. Although we know it's in there because we can equip all of it. That's
No, we know it's there. To this day, we still don't. I mean, they showed us a little bit more than any other time in Last Raven. We
yes.
still don't know where a person sits. We still aren't totally sure how they're even controlling their armored core. But there a person sits.
I got a little bit of homework I was looking at on this. See if I can dig things up again. And I will pass it to you if so. That had some actual production sketches from with some cross sections of ACs, namely from LR. Obviously, there was a whole scene from the second CG intro of Last Raven. Those of you that remember, Zenaida stepping out of the top of the core unit. And, as with any media production piece, especially a large artistic endeavor, you're going to have a team of designers that dedicate themselves working in this, and all this stuff doesn't immediately go to the CG board. You have conceptual sketches and work that goes into it. And it was really cool to run into this.
You know what I always wondered?
Hmm.
Seriously, and I'm sure anyone who played the old school games probably wondered this too, and including you. If you're Humans Plus and you're actually connected to your Armored Core, how are you going to the bathroom? You've wondered this too. Don't tell me you haven't. Anybody has? I've always wondered. I mean, is your junk hooked up too? I mean, is that the whole thing happening? I mean, is that used for fuel?
As we know with the history with Human Plus and everything you have, it's literally a pilot that has been, you've become one with, not in a Zen way, embedded in your machine. Yes. And not in a Zen way, not in Zen.
No,
there's no martial arts behind this.
In fact, it's quite the opposite because you're so bad at what you do. It's almost like a punishment, but it's weird. But yeah, so I've always wondered that. Come on, you admit it. You've wondered that too. How does that work? And how do they eat? Does one of your mechanics like hand you a sandwich or something? And because you can't leave your core.
Not gonna lie, I've wondered the latter way more than the first one. But I think if you actually think about that second question, eating, well, okay, the second part's going to come with it. Who knows?
Yeah, inevitably, yeah.
I had so much disdain for Op-Eye that I think I tried to skate away from any topics where I had to ponder about it too long anyway.
No, when we finally get somebody from Software on the show, I'm asking them. Humans Plus, how do they poo?
Maybe you don't. I don't think you even need to anymore.
What do you mean?
You probably don't. I mean, organic.
If you're eating, you have to.
But are you even eating?
Then you're not a person anymore.
Right. Right.
No. If it's organic, it needs substance.
Oh, well, you know what? We should ask Stinger. Get him on the show sometime.
Is it like the Matrix? Are we all hooked up like that? Because even then, they're eating and they're pooping. They're just eating and pooping other people.
Core rationale broken down to its highest extent.
I mean, obviously, I'm joking with this, but it's a legitimate question, though. I think it's like, did they think this out?
Man, the funniest part about all of it is, when it comes down to it, we don't have tons of even conceptual information on, the core as far as exactly, what all the piloting, occupancy, what all that looks like, and like all the structures of the cockpit. I think it'd be cool if you could see this like for 5, for 4, for all the eras instead of just maybe a snapshot of a few. But,
and I remember back in the Armored Core 3 intro, a lot of people thought, "Oh, well, there's a guy typing on the keyboard and all that." It's like, no, that could be the guy giving him his orders.
Yep, exactly.
We've never really known it. All right, come on, time to unveil here. All right, who cares? All right, I'm having some fun with it, but who cares? All right, so let's get down to it.
Yeah. Obviously, when you think back, with AC and where the core started, well, you come back to Armored Core 1. And I can't help but think of that, original intro where you begin in that just simple dark space and an AC is constructed before it rolls out for a mission.
Mm-hmm.
The core unit as of AC1. Now, we didn't have any crazy features or special things at this point, but this is where you mounted everything else from. So you had, there was your missile interceptor. Tierson himself freaked out the day that his core shot a laser.
That was awesome. Laser beams, free lasers.
You had your missile interceptor. Another very important thing that cores would house were your optional part slots.
Optional parts. I'm still protesting.
Yep, we need them back.
Where are they?
We need them back.
Yep.
Optional parts were great. I mean, they could influence everything from your handling to perhaps like your FCS lock size to your braking, to your energy weapon compatibility. There were tons of cool things that came out with optional parts. And this was elaborated on as the series went on. But you normally see some things repeated. I think that some staples people would always take, where there's very little reason not to. Reduced damage from shell, reduced damage from energy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, pretty hands down, just awesome, especially for usually only occupying about 3 slots at a time. So yeah, your core would also control the amount of slots you could have for optional. So others, if you wanted to go really optional heavy, you may want to take that into consideration when you were equipping a core on your design. Other than that, you also had a stat for your arm weight. So it was important as you were loading up, depending on how much load you were putting on, e.g. heavy arms plus, everything else, how much capacity, you'd have. And of course, that was in addition to the separate stat of leg weight. Being overweight has been an AC for as long as we can remember. But this was a neat kind of side addition to that. And it really carried with the series for a long time with arm weight. This was with AC2 and pretty much, going on with the PS2 generation as well.
The interesting thing about the core weight, the arm weight, it was obviously a tool they put in there for attempting to balance,
Mm-hmm.
but I never thought that it worked very well. In fact, it was always just kind of some kind of weird, obscure stat that every once in a while got in your way for no good
Yeah,
reason.
yeah, exactly. I think the first time I ran into it was, oh goodness, and I was doing some weird experiment with like a heavy arm and then like a Kurosawa and something, and then I got that message. It flashed up. But you're right. It just tended to me as well. When this would come up, it just seemed like that's just in the way, and it's just a simple thing. You made a tweak or two, and you just walked around it. You were paying way more attention to, is my entire AC overweight or not? Like, and can I still feel that okay? That was really the major factor. So
Yeah.
obviously, the other thing about your core, really I could think of here was, your defenses. This was really a big staple point for where you gain defense of energy and defense shell. Uh, Obviously, this changes way later as you look at what Verdict Day is now to the way cores are divided. But for then, it was still your centerpiece and your arms and everything else came around it. And depending on the way you armored, you might have more shell, you might have more energy by the end, or roughly a balance depending on what class you're aiming for. So
This was also in large part dictated by the company that makes them.
yeah, yeah, very pertinent point to mention. Something that we've had long running in the AC series. I guess you could say, with the exception of one. We've usually had a company that's very oriented towards high tech, very sleek design, Zeo Matrix, Mirage, et cetera, et cetera. And then you've had the chunkier, stronger, bulkier, more shell defensive atmosphere that came with like Emerald, Crest, and some of the others. Murakumo and Chrome early on, in the original Armored Core. Really, it felt like two giant corporations battling for control. It wasn't as much about, at least I felt, the sleek aesthetic. One thing I liked about the later Armored Core is in terms of design. The parts were more easily identifiable. Like, come AC2, I could look at a core or a part and tell, oh yeah, that's a Zeo design or that's an Emerald design. They were, it was a really, really clear aesthetic to those.
Right. Yeah, no, that was always kind of neat too. Something that's lacking nowadays. I mean, they can put in as much story as they want, but when it gets to end game, it lacks a lot of depth, and that's just something that was always kind of nice. That there
Agreed.
was that little bit of depth there.
Agreed. You even had some people, and this is going to segue right into our jump to AC2. You had some people that even enjoyed to fully theme around a certain company. Someone said, I love the look of these parts. I want to try to make an all Zeo AC, or I want an all Emerald AC
Mm-hmm.
because I like how those sync up. And of course, you're free to mix and match whatever you want. But hey, there were always a few style points. All right, that could be given for pure company centric designs. I think Moonwalker would have something to say about this too, because I know
Every
he
once
was.
every once in a while you would have somebody who thought that was the way that you should do it, that
Yeah.
by building an AC of all one company, that things would be balanced out appropriately for those parts, which I don't think ever actually panned out to be true.
Right.
But you would have people that would do that, and it's like, all right, man, you go ahead and rock that. Let's see how you do at the next tournament on with that
Yeah.
one.
Oh, that's one trait that is interesting. Aesthetics versus competitive AC. That's one trait I could say never passed over smoothly. Of well, clearly the best ACs only use parts from Crest, or they only use parts from. Come on, let's face it. You were going to go with your theme, what was going to mesh best with what you were trying to roll in your AC and your weapon loadout. The corporation, the company that designed them, well, in terms of technicals, didn't come into play.
Right. So yeah, I mean, starting with AC and going through basically the first gen. I mean, you had your lights, you had your middleweights, you had your
Mm-hmm.
heavies.
Mm-hmm.
You had depending on what you wanted to focus on, because I believe with Master of Arena it really got pretty in depth. You had a lot of different options out of those three types. You could have
Yeah,
missile
there were.
intercepts, or you could have more optional parts, or anything in between as far as how those varied as far as their effectiveness or options that you had. Um, it's very simplistic, but at the same time very important. But then it was with Gen 2 that excuse me, that we had something else added into the mix.
And in my opinion, probably one of the most beautiful advents to Armored Core ever, the Overboost. Ah, this was a shining feature of AC2, so prominent that, I mean, heck, it was featured in the intro. I mean, hey, um, Overboost was your high speed mechanic. We've stepped into PlayStation 2. It's a future era now, even though we're still in the same chronology slash timeline of AC1, but we've moved to Mars now, is where the focus is. And the overboost was fun for just so many reasons. Like, it gave you not just a new way to position your AC, but you could close distance quickly. You could use zoning tactics easier if you really wanted to, play your game that way. Quick strafes. It went great with weapon loadouts. But the most interesting thing to mention about the feature is that it was force implemented on cores. In AC2, there wasn't a single core you were going to equip or run across that did not have overboost. This was not an option. And quite a pickup coming off of AC1, where we're used to cores with the regular function. Now, important to note, we maintain all the things that we'd already built upon in AC1. You had your missile interceptors, you had your optional part slots, you had your class types of weight, light, mid, and heavy, and the accompanying defenses and everything else that followed. But now there's this feature that's added on top of it. And it's really important to note that this was also before we had a really even a significant heat punishment for overboost
Hmm.
at all. I mean, you were very free here to really check out what you were looking for in terms of performance. Now, you had your high-speed OB cores, or you could have maybe a slower, more deliberate OB that drained less energy. You didn't move as quick, but it was a little more precise. Maybe you didn't need as much speed. Maybe you just needed it for jousting runs and things like that. Um, but this was a really cool way, not just to get from point A to point B, but it brought in just an incredible array of tactics that could be added to Armored Core. This is where slide jumping was born. I'm not sure how many people were messing with it during this time. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there, but even those type of movements, to go to send the legs of your AC, into a lock, and to pull a slide and to still fire what you wanted. It left so much room open. You could, if you wanted, you could just hard break skid with it. You could just cut your overboost and just come to a hard stop. Some people like.
Heartbreak Skid. Just sounded awesome.
Yeah.
What to say? Heartbreak Skid.
Some people liked having I think the brake optional when it came to those things. Like, oh, I'm moving really fast, I want to be able to stop on a dime. But I think that's part of the beauty of AC. As you came along and really learned how to handle things really well, you realize, well, the brake option wasn't really as needed. If you just skated your boosters just right, or you'd come just above ground at the time you needed to, you were fine. You could coast away with whatever you needed. Um, yeah, we're going to talk a little about a bit at the end too, but I just got to throw a mention here for it too. This was the game where my favorite core of all time was born. That's the ZCL XA2. This was from Zeo Matrix. It's the core from the Blue Zeo in the intro of AC2, a very famous AC. Had a purple OB for the trail, and I enjoyed it because it was super fast, and it had very, very nice room for optional slots to it as well. I think later on, I'd get more into the cores. It still had good speed, still maintained decent speed, but they didn't have to be the fastest. Because that wasn't necessarily a selling factor. But this guy was, hands down. It beat the Rook, and the rest of the cores. The retooling of Nine Balls core. The UCL. I don't think it was UCL. It was
Oh,
the
don't
one.
ask me.
The ECL1. I think it was the retooling of that. Yeah. This was the real speed demon, and yes, it pulled more on your energy and everything, but I loved the utility you could get out of it in terms of just, warping across the map and everything else. So, and the design rocked. The back of it reminded me of some kind of sports car. The way your OB would start, and it was just fun, a lot of fun. So, as I'm saying that, this idea of sports cars and stuff, here's where our aesthetic lands. That's what it sounded like too. We had mentioned this a bit, but here's where Zeo Matrix gets the very sleek designs, and you see Crest with the kind of bulkier, chunkier designs. And ironically, a lot of their frame parts, cores included, had more of a shell defense aptitude, whereas the Zeo Matrix parts tended to have more of an energy defense. And between those, you built up to a similar story to the way you tooled out your AC for the AC1 era. So, Tierson, when this was implemented, when we got overboost as a must for each core, how did you take to that? I mean, was it something you were like, oh cool, this is awesome, I enjoyed it, or were you just kind of ambivalent, or something else entirely?
Eh,
Just
it was all
whatever.
right. It was all right. It wasn't the most practical function, but it was cool. It was there. I mean, I remember with AC2 basically figuring out, okay, if I make a lightweight, I pretty much don't even need to ever use this. So whatever. I mean, I'm not against it anyway,
No,
but
right.
it just wasn't it wasn't the most practical ability. So
Right. Yeah, and I mean that's important to still mention. Your high power boosters. And depending on the size of your frame, like how lightweight you were, you could get plenty of speed. Overboost was not a must. In fact, oftentimes when when you're going through arena against your AI opponents, there weren't extreme tactics they'd be putting to use with these. It would be point A to point B, quick
very
strafe
gimmicky.
runs. Very gimmicky, very gimmicky. You can even I'm sure you can go back and just play Ares, at rank 1 today and notice he'll come flying at you and then just pull a full hard stop, just come slide into a halt with it. Very gimmicky, but uh, the style points though off the chart. I mark my real, I guess, foray, just I guess my just true AC birth, abandoned highway hitting overboost for the first time with the ZCL XA core. I was sold from then on. So, and I haven't stopped raving about it since.
All right.
That's good for two.
Let's.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there you get overboost, and we have overboost to this day. At this point, pretty much everything we're seeing still exists, with the
Yeah.
exception of optional parts.
Yeah.
But and Humans Plus, but that is what it was, and
Correct.
um, then we're going into Gen 3, and this, just like most of Armored Core, is where we see most of the additions and changes.
Yes.
To start out, we get a lot of people's favorites, including let's see, Darkling Vlad. He says that EOs are his favorite. I have to agree. EOs, Exceed Orbits, come in with Gen 3. Like most major changes in Armored Core 3, in Gen 3, it creeps along and gives you more options as we
Yep.
get new games. But first, we start out with the energy ones.
Yeah, the fun thing about the energy EOs and what really, really chipped in about these was to have a weapon that not only came from your core, but that could replenish. I mean, I was really shocked the first time I used that. And I said, this is fantastic. Finally a weapon that can replenish itself without necessarily having to have a blade or, a melee. Because before that was really your big default, fallback. But hey, these were fun. They weren't going to be, open this and from 600 range you can hit anybody you want and overheat anything. No. But for the supplementary attack that they added for your AC, great stuff. Great stuff. I'm really surprised we haven't seen extra additions, at least with ideas like this, going into uh, the rest of the PS3 era, because it's a great option. I say, why force everybody to go high speed? A lot of people want to load extra weapons on your AC and just create a really devastating assault. I mean, this is where you had room to do it. And as far as with the energy EOs, you had the rapid fire one, I think later known as the Uranus core. I don't know the early name. You had the like the heavier energy cores that would fire not as quickly, but would definitely pack more of a kick when they did hit, and were better at closer ranges. Really cool addition, real cool stuff, and they're dearly missed.
Well, and I think it was, geez, which one was it? Nexus or was it Last Raven? No, I think it was Last Raven that we got the solid ones.
Yeah, actually, no, we peel back a little bit. We actually saw some of those during SL. Even I know we had the linear core.
Oh,
You
that's
know,
what I meant. I meant Silent Line. I'm sorry. That
right,
is
right,
what I
right,
meant.
right. Oh no, you're good. Yeah, Cleric goes on about this one a lot, but yeah, you gain solid cores, and one of the ones I remember most is the machine gun core, as people
Hmm.
call it. And this guy was going to evolve to be a real monster later on. We talked about that in some other shows.
Hmm.
We had a couple versions. You had the midweight core, the axe core, and then later on, this core, as time went on, would be known as the E2 core, and it was crazy and very, very accurate. So obviously the solid weapons were limited in terms of ammo count, um, but depending on how much of an up you got on your opponent, especially if you caught a good flank, it was fantastic. Like for example, coming down from the air, unloading your EO along with your left and right arm weapons, you could really shave AP pretty hardcore with these. And yeah, it's and some of them, it's funny. They were taken out. Like I said, we lost the linear core as we went forward, but they kept the MG cores and the other things like that. So kind of surprised we didn't see missiles or small missiles or like maybe small deployable orbits, things
There
like
were
that.
so many options. I mean, there was double back missiles you could put on.
You
There was
did, you did.
extensions, and I mean, there was all kinds of things you could do with missiles. Although I can understand where you're coming from. That would have been neat.
Hmm. Hmm. So, again, when we look at Gen 3 as really kind of a broad stretch because, well, all these parts had a similar look the whole time, but I mean, this was such a long running line where parts were continuously modified. We had our additions, we had our changes, we had little tweaks and balances here and there, but, they hung with all the way through up to LR. And, by the time we started to hit Nexus and, especially like Ninebreaker LR, this is when you really started to see core diversity, I think, at its peak. By the time we hit Nexus, we explored the hanger cores as well. And so on top of all these options we've just spoken about, the function of cores, what we have available, we have this additional option where you could store weapons inside your cores if they were small enough, such as
Hangers.
such as handguns, small machine guns, things of that nature. And it's important to note that you were never going to see a hanger and an EO together. They didn't mix, but
Right.
you would see some hanger and OB. You were going to see hanger only cores at certain points, and so it was a fun option. If you didn't want the weapon attached in your core, and you just said, I just want to use that handgun, or just to have a backup blade, especially the pocket knife, to be able to pull out your switchblade when you needed it. That was a really cool feature of hangers that came in, and by the end of the 3 era, as we look at all these in unison, you had the whole board laid out before you. I think the one I ended up going with was the UL core. It was a Crest OB core with hanger as well as missile interception option. And I mean, I think that's just a poster child for the sheer amount of options you had on cores at this point. And on top of all that, you still had your internals, your optional
Hmm.
choices and everything else. Crazy stuff, real fun.
It's five at the end of five. Looking at Ninebreaker and Last Raven, you really had a lot of options, a lot of variety. I mean, there wasn't much that you'd say, oh, geez, I wish they would have
Yeah,
this because it was pretty much already there, and that was pretty nice. Again, a lot of why Gen 3 was so inspiring.
it was. It was. So it's not known if we're going to see this kind of ratcheting up again of functionality. Be-
Well, we do still kind of have hangers. I mean, I think it's safe to say that the the secondary weapons. I'm forgetting the name for it right now.
Mhm.
I think that's the evolution
Mhm.
of hangers, which is
Mhm.
that you can use any weapon on there except for cannons. But
Yeah,
yeah, I think that's still very much in the game.
yeah, have them there on the outside. Now, what I do think is really important here is the jump between the end of the third gen going into four. And there's a real halt here because instead of just building on top of everything Cores had done, well, this was a bit of a reset for the series. So, Cores changed, and
This is when we start seeing things getting taken away.
yeah, all this diversity and complexity we built, this is where things get turned over. Namely, EOs disappear completely. Uh,
Boo!
Optional parts disappear completely and
Boo!
are replaced with FRS tuning points that you can earn, via missions. Um, Hangers die, and
Bullshit.
the preach it. The list goes on, but what remains is overboost. And
Remix is over.
it's when I first looked at 4, I thought we were kind of peeling back to, AC2, and I was kind of baffled as to, why would we do that with seemingly highly advanced ACs at this point, when you're running around with force fields. Um, with the induction of with the induction of primal armor, things really just kind of flipped. That the most interesting thing that happened here, though, is important to note. OB though wasn't tied to the core. You now had a bunch of booster functions. You had your main booster, your side booster, your back booster, and then you had an
Butt
over
booster,
booster. Pretty much any other booster
butt
you want.
booster, your ankle boosters, your forehead boosters,
Those are really important. Like
weapon
that.
boosters.
But if you just look at where things were, these came down to the over boost part, the over booster, and it was literally a booster part that controlled your OB output. And the way I looked at these things, it was kind of like a nuclear reactor. Your OB was tied to your PA, your primal armor field. So when you OB'd, you'd pull a little bit from that. You wouldn't just drain the gauge completely. And higher performance OB parts would pull on it more. But it was really a whole different way of presenting the whole system. I think a big reason too is because we didn't have heat at this point. And we talked a bit about this. AC2, no penalty for heat. The further we went into Generation 3, even going into another age, in the previous ACs, heat was introduced harder, so you felt that heat more when you activated your OB. Here in
We
AC4,
haven't
it's gone.
haven't actually said it, but because it's kind of obvious. Your generators and heaters are housed in your core.
Yeah. Another super, super, super important thing about cores. All those good and delicious internals.
Well, and with 5, and we're not there yet. I mean, things feel more streamlined, but actually, cores have quite a few new options to them. But we'll get there.
They do. They do. But we're looking at the things that have fallen off here, and the things the strange additions that we had during 4. If
Uh,
anything, the stat that I look at, it's really interesting here. It was added, were the PA stats. You had your PA rec and your PA durability for your shields, and building your PA shields. You still had solid and energy defense. I think it was called ballistics defense in AC4 for solid that took the place of that. And your frame parts would build into that the same way it always had, but honestly, those were going to be paper thin once your PA barrier dropped. Really, your primal armor defenses were the big mainstay of your initial defenses, and your core kind of built into that. But looking at what you had, things were really stripped down and a lot simpler here. If you take the boosters away, if you take the rest of it and look at the cores for the stats and what they did, very simplistic. Um, Missile interception on cores, that's even out the window, uh, which is pretty amazing.
uh-huh.
That was basically relegated to extensions, and that felt kind of empty. And I was really bummed out about that. And I said there's so much that had built into cores that had just been kind of dumped in the trash, and it was what it was. And you built your weapon loadout and everything else threw it on top of it. Still the centerpiece of your AC, still where you house your generator and whatnot. Don't need a radiator anymore, but that's where we sat. And it maintained the same standard at 4 answer as well. With the only addition being assault armor. This was added to your overboost part. You would have less OB performance, but you gain an addition of an attack called AA Assault Armor. You detonate your PA barrier, dealing a crap load of damage to whatever you were near. In one patch, this was nuts. I forget which one. Sorry about that. But I just remember going into matches and lobbies and everyone just lighting the field green, just because of their range had been extended and everything else. So besides the addition of Assault Armor, that's really all we were going to be seeing that generation. Not a whole lot of ground covered. Cores are really simplified here. Functions are relegated more to the boosters and the other externals and FRS tuning, and that's where things were left.
Too much to see already. All right, let's get into 5.
Here we are. That brings
All
us
right.
near present. AC5.
Armored Core 5. All right, optional parts are still gone. That sucks. Missile defense still gone. Obviously, a couple of additions. Let's see. There's the heat stat to it now. Oh shoot, what am I thinking of? Not
Mm.
decoys. I always get this mixed up. Recon,
Recons.
yeah, it's a
Gotcha.
different five-letter word. Recons, big one. The amount of recons that you have,
Definitely.
that is a new addition. Obviously, with the third defense being added in, that's the core defenses, and actually that's really one of the most important functions of the
It
core now.
is. It is. This deserves a really quick highlight here because this is one of the most important breakdowns and changes we've had. Even with the inconsistencies in core evolution we had going from third gen, to fourth, things being thrown out, the defenses, solid and energy were always there since one. This is things change with that completely. Your KE, your CE, and your TE, and even more than that, breaking those down into different weight categories. E.g.,
Hmm.
we tend to see the highest, KE. We do see the highest KE in the lighter cores. Your more midweight cores tend to have, your CE, the best CE, whereas your heaviest cores, the heaviest weight cores, and as well as beefy in their design too, are really the TE cores. Um, eh,
Yeah, only with Verdict Day have we noticed that they're moving that around a little bit. You got some CE
yeah,
cores that, well, I should say some CE cores. They're heavy, but they're technically in the lightweight category. They're in the CE category, but they have some solid TE defense. They
definitely.
start moving around a little.
Yeah, they do. And part of me wonders this is because of how, in this age of how ACs are refurbished and the technology is being rediscovered, the way all the different weaponry and the defenses function differently. I'm not too sure. Um, but I really think tying defenses to weight class is an enormous change. It's no longer about the aesthetic of equipping a core or just simply, the weight. Now, if you're just trying to specifically go for a light core, well, okay, you're going to be locked into, KE def. Or if you're trying to do a big, substantial raise to a certain defense, hey, you can really look at where your core sits. And that's probably, besides your legs, a really huge area you can gain a lot of defense in a certain stat to what you're looking for. So, the core, I really feel, for 5 in Verdict Day, ties so much closer to survivability.
Well,
Which,
it does have a couple other stats too.
yeah,
There is the ability. I forget the name of it right now, but there's a stat that dictates how well your core works with your boosters and how well it works with the energy that you have. I forget the name of the stat at the moment. It doesn't play a huge function, but it does have a function in it and gets you a couple extra points in speed. Then there's also, geez, and again, I can't remember I don't use the over weapons too much, so I don't pay
yeah,
attention to the stat really. But there's a stat as well that works again with the generator, to dictate
thermal
how well
thermal
you use
resistance.
the thermal. Yeah, that's which is kind of funny because it's pretty much its only function, isn't it?
Yeah, that stat is only tied to over weapons. That has nothing to do with heat you take from lasers or anything else fancy. That will directly apply to, over weapon compatibility.
Right.
So,
So, a couple things there. They're a bit niche. Obviously, if you're trying to build the fastest AC, you're going to pay attention to how well your core relates with your generator and boosters. But even then, it doesn't do a heck of a lot for you. But if you're trying to min max a bit, you're going to pay attention to that one.
hmm for sure. So, looking at where those sit, like we said for Verdict Day, we've got the retrofit parts that shift some of the defensive categories around a bit so it's not so hard lined into, your weight choices. Those options are a little more flexible, a little more malleable. Hangers at this point, like we said earlier, they moved outside of core. That's something you mount directly on your shoulders, kind of like where extensions used to be, if anything. And with that function moving, and also your overboost really being renamed to glide boost. But let's face it, we all know it's overboost. Um, that's
This guy.
yeah. Oh, shameless plugs of overboost. You know, um, that's of course your booster trail doesn't change at all now, which is interesting. Your OB, at least in third gen and second gen, was highly dependent on the core, the color, the shape. As of AC4, it really didn't matter anymore, and they took that on into 5 as well. The power of your boost doesn't influence the look of your OB a whole lot, but still, that's again relegated to your parts. Your booster parts more than your core itself. What you're directly equipping there. So, plenty to look at. I mean, you still have the similar things missing that you did from 4, but it's different. I don't feel things were just reduced to be reduced. If anything, cores are a lot more streamlined along with the system. AC5, you can kind of tell things are built with that in mind. So,
Yeah, I agree with you up until the obvious. And see now, and when I came into five, I hadn't played four at all yet. I didn't put myself through that until later on. But the obviousness of no optional parts, I was so shocked about that when
Yeah,
I fired it up. I'm like, where the hell are the optional parts? Can you give me one good reason why that doesn't exist?
I can't. I mean, the best I could really say about it is that of the way they fit the system. I mean, if you fit optional parts in, I mean, you'd have to have like a CE, a TE, like a KE resist, like, for the defenses, a widening of energy, widening of FCS boxes. Best I can do for you is lost technology. They don't know how, William. They don't know how. They've forgotten.
Lost technology.
That's all I got.
Oh.
I'm going
Yeah,
along with
lost
all the spoiler
technology
fluff.
on the developer's part. Zing. Oh, it really is a shame. I was shocked. In fact, that immediately, and I've talked about this before. Immediately, I started Armored Core 5 with a little bit of a disappointment in that. Yeah, I pretty much knew how the game functioned in comparison to the previous gens, but never saw anything about optional parts not being in there. That's just a no-brainer. It's like,
Yeah.
why? Why? But anyways, yeah, I do have to say that while we talked about this before the show, I don't particularly have a favorite.
Yeah.
In fact, I will play with cores quite a bit, although less in five than in the previous games. I will always look at other cores. I'll always try to make them fit more to the AC I have in mind.
Right.
Um, I do have to say Gen 5 has the coolest looking cores.
Interesting. You like the aesthetic of those best, huh?
I like the aesthetic of AC5 over any of the other ones.
Cool.
I mean, yeah, it's a beautiful game, but yeah, definitely. I mean, there's more detail. They look a hell of a lot more functional. They're just the coolest looking ones, I think, in my opinion.
Cool. And there you have it. So it's kind of neat. It's not a particular core for you, but it's just the general, the whole art look. I like the as far as the presentation for five, especially the shorter ACs and everything that you have. I have like zero problems with the aesthetic, but it's neat. I think some of my faves still lie back with second and third gen. I'm probably gonna say some stuff with second just because we've seen third so much. It got drilled into our heads too hard. Um, and hey, that comes down to a thing of preference. So, hey, any of you out there, if you got a favorite core, you got a favorite core type, if you just like a certain look of a core, hey, we'd love to hear about it.
Always.
Post up in the relevant thread, drop us a line, where, ravensvoiceacl@gmail.com. Going over to Facebook too, there's also, a way for you to enter into our upcoming event. If you want to even post it there, go ahead. But we love to hear from you. Love to hear from your opinions on this topic, how you've used cores throughout the years, or if there have been any like just absolute must about a core you had to have on your AC, even stat wise. I think that'd be fun to hear. So, but with that,
I
that's
think for me. Oh, I'm sorry.
no. I was gonna say that's all I had, man. Go
Oh, I
ahead.
was gonna say, I think for me, I think out of function, some of the cores obviously, I'm talking about Gen 3 for the most part. Some of the
Yeah.
cores obviously looked a lot cooler than others, but I always had a hard time ditching the missile defense function for
Yeah.
for something
Yeah.
else.
That
I
makes
mean,
sense.
that's free defense.
It is. It is. And while you weren't gonna look for your core missile interception to catch every volley of everything all the time. I mean, it was still useful. It was still very useful. And if you were a person that enjoyed using, extra missile interception or extensions or decoys or something along those lines, that gave you even more of a pre-buffer and security behind missile volleys, as long as you were
That
facing the right way.
Yeah, and well, that really mattered in Gen 3 too.
Yeah.
Missiles were pretty damn important. So.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So, again, preferences. I went at least half of, or at least part of Gen 3, without. Especially when I was using the Ray core. I adored that when that got released in SL. Woohoo! Hashtag Mirage OB. Um, as for the rest of it, yeah, the UL core. Having that missile interception always rocked. I was a fan of the early decoys, especially for the super accurate, missile volleys. You contend with in the earlier times. It was just good to have and just a good option to have available. So, but I was never as hesitant. I didn't mind dropping the missile feature if I was going to get something more out of my core. When I picked a core, especially for OB, had a hawk's eye attention to those stats and what it was going to give me, because I said, hey, I will use my maneuverability and my speed as an escape. So
that's why you always lost.
yeah, I mean, that's something I should have modified, man. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I should have just done that EO thing. Maybe I should have just thrown it out the window and just gone pure hanger. So.
Pure hanger. All right, I think that's going to do it for us for the week.
It will. So, hey, again, thank you all for tuning in. Looking forward to hearing from you, hearing your thoughts. But until then, we will catch you later. Catch you for another episode, same time, same place. Take it easy, have a safe weekend, and we will talk to you again soon.
See you guys next week.
Best.